Hello, everyone. Welcome today. I'm excited to have another Microsoft alumni that is new to my network, but Jigar Thakkar, welcome, and please introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Yes, I'm Jigar. I've spent most of my career as a software engineer and then a software leader at Microsoft for around 20 years and built products in various different teams, building Microsoft CRM, Dynamics CRM from scratch, and then moving on to Windows phones and Bing and MSN. And the highlight of my career was at Microsoft was building Microsoft Teams. I was a founding engineering leader for Teams. And after nearly 20 years at Microsoft, I decided to do something new and different and learn different things and challenge myself. And that's when I moved on to New York City. It was a big move from West Coast to East Coast. And I took on the role as a CTO of MSCI. And I spent 7 years as a CTO of MSCI.
Fantastic. Wow, those are some really strong credentials. I'm honored to have you. So let me set the tone. I typically get right into asking my guests how they define respect. But today, I think I want to taint this a little bit because I think we share this experience. So I can vividly remember, I think you were at Microsoft in the C Bomber days, and I vividly remember him at the company meeting, jumping up and down, always excited and inspiring employees all around the world. And then he paused one time and said, Look, I've been given feedback that I'm very open. I'm direct and I say it how it is, right? That's not going to change. But what I've also learned from my peers and my wife that I need to bring in respect when I do that. So if that resonates with you, Jigar, I'd love to hear your perspectives on that. And then please go ahead and define what respect means to you in the workplace.
Oh, that's a really interesting and fond memory. It was, I think, what, 25 years ago, Bobby. So thanks for reminding. I think those big company meetings and the Safeco feed and all those things were used to be a lot of fun days. I think so. Yeah, I think you're started on the right path where I was thinking along the lines of, respect is not just about being polite and being courteous, which is the part of the basics. I think things go beyond that. That do you value the contributions of the individual who's point in case in this case, right? Are you actively listening to their concerns or their viewpoints? And other things like, are you respecting professional boundaries? After COVID, people started working from home and things can get started to get pretty blurry. When are you at work? When are you at home? So respecting those kinds of boundaries and the open and candid communication is really important. And your example of Bomber cuts both ways. Well, in his case, he said he was very open and direct and he had to be more respectful. There are a lot more examples of the reverse where people are very respectful. And in doing so, they're not open and candid and giving that feedback or saying things that need to be explained. So I think you have to strike the right balance and you have to be respectful, but being open and candid to me, along with being fair and having equity across the organization, not having favoritism, all of those things are what I mean by having respect at work.
Wonderful. Yeah, and thank you. I'm also very curious and have been looking for research on the topic of passive aggressiveness. I see it all the time with my clients. There are a lot more kind cultures than there are open and direct cultures. And that's why, even though it's been quite a long time since I left Microsoft, that's one of the big lessons I learned early in my career was exactly this concept of, it's not always clean. And I think so the other side of clean is like it gets messy at times, but it takes courage to get messy and get into those things that may feel uncomfortable at first, but give yourself that chance to really go there rather than avoiding it. So describe to us, Jigar, how do you know when you're feeling there's a culture of respect? What are some of those telltale signs of a company culture that has respect?
There are many ways you can gauge that. I think one of the fundamental ways, whether you are a very senior leader or you're a new employee, do you feel that your voice is heard? Do you feel confident that you can speak up? Do you feel you're trusted and you have some autonomy in doing your tasks, your assignments, or your projects? And when you do something, your contribution gets acknowledged. And does that not doesn't necessarily mean all the time promotions or public announcements or anything like that. It simply means that people notice that you accomplished some task, and you get support or help when you need it, right? Those are the things are very basic things that when you feel those things, you feel respected, generally speaking, at workplace. I think your comment about modeling, I think that is the key, right? You have to model the right behavior as a leader of showing respect, and then you can expect that from the organization. And part of it, there are many facets to this discussion, but one of the things I really hone in on is whether you're speaking with the CEO or you're speaking with interns and everybody in between. Do you feel are you able to spend that time and listening to them, providing guidance or learning from them, um, and providing respect and giving them space to voice their opinions? That is really key. And I think that culture where you're providing expectations are very clear is also very critical. Another thing, I mean, look, we spend time with various stakeholders as leaders, right? Whether it's outside stakeholders like investors or clients or board of directors or senior leaders like the CEO or so on and so forth. Or it's junior most developers you've just hired or interns you want to motivate and everything between. But you do spend a lot of time with your most closest group, which is your peer group, your direct reports, and your managers. So if you think about the most closest people you spend most time with, and I think the candid communication and the humility to also accept when you have made a mistake or you have wronged somebody is important. It shows vulnerability. It is not a bad thing to accept if you have um, done something that you would like to do differently in the future. In fact, I would even tell my immediate team that you have full not just authority to, but I'm asking you to give feedback to each other, to me, um, and be very candid about the workspace. Because if you want to move fast and you want to build things, you want to drive massive amount of change in an organization, you are at the bleeding edge of technology, and there are constant pressures of marketplace and budgets and all the kinds of things. If you want to have a very high performing team, it is going to have friction. It is not going to be all hunky dory. So at that point, the culture of having respect, but also course correcting quickly when things get a little out of control. But having the other person feel like they can call you out on something, or you can call them out on something. So some amount of trust amongst each other that this is not about the person; it's about the behavior that person might have exhibited at some point in time. So we create a culture where both parties feel very open to voice their opinions. Uh, my approach has been very simple in that, and I think to your point about respect, there can be in certain cultures, I'm not talking about any particular country, but in general sense, there could be an overlap between what somebody thinks of respect and what somebody thinks of bureaucracy. And what we always want to have respect in any dimension, but not commanded based on hierarchy. So if you are way down in the food chain and you're a new developer, and you have some idea and you disagree with the leader, and it's a pretty important disagreement, you should be able to voice it. That is good for the business. That is good for the customers. That is good for the culture of the company. And I think there is no better way to do this than just meeting with folks at every level, showing that hierarchy is not what we care too much about. We care about meritocracy. We care about ideas. We care about contribution. One of the practices I've done, and it was not because in the context of respect, but when I went on these business trips and we have um, more than 2,000 folks in Mumbai and Pune, for example, Bangalore and so on and so forth, 600 folks in Budapest and whatnot. So whenever I travel, there in the very early days, my first set of meetings used to be the senior most people, the people who had been the longest tenured in the company and all of that. And over time, I started shifting that. And I love those discussions, by the way. I started shifting that. We say, the first meeting I want to have, apart from the orientation and getting the schedule of the week decided and all of that, I want to meet with the last batch of interns and fresh graduates under 1 year, right? From every function, not just technology and data or technical program management. That's my responsibility and so on and so forth. But it's whether they're in finance, marketing, sales, any function, and it's optional, obviously. I would love to meet with the bright-eyed, fresh new ideas, fresh out of college, or actually interns, and hear them out. Because sometimes you get really fresh perspective on new ideas from them. And sometimes when you ask them, so how can you run faster? What slows you down at work? Those kinds of questions. And you hear crickets for the first 10 seconds and you make a couple of jokes about it and say there's a big prize for opening up. And then people start opening up and then you start use a little bit of humor, get connected with them, open them up, and then they start sharing stories about how can they move faster. So when they see that, when their managers see that, they realize that, you know what, it's a little bit of a culture of have fun, move fast, build things, break things when needed, and be candid and be open and be bold. You have to not suppress the boldness of the youth, or the people who are junior to you. You have to allow them to speak up, and that is part of the earlier topic we discussed, that are you being heard or not. So I think that there are great cultures all around the world. I mean, if you think about West and the East and everywhere, and you want to bring the best out of both cultures, and that is when you put that together, you have a fantastic workspace which is respectful but moving fast and building things.
So, Jigar, let's go to the other side. Let's, if you could, again, save the innocent, but an experience where things didn't go quite well, and how did you navigate them when there was disrespect in an environment? And just for context, I put out data on this. I think it relates to the cost of toxic cultures. It's huge and lost productivity because of toxic cultures. I'm sure you've experienced it. We all have. How you navigated that and sort of brought things back on track to have the sort of space that you want for your culture?
Yeah, I think it can happen time to time, even in very healthy and strong organizations where there's pressures for deadline or budgets or meeting the earnings release, or a product launch or what kind of or various different kinds of reasons, right? And people can feel very frustrated and demotivated, or they feel ignored and dismissed, and so on and so forth. Or sometimes it's about micromanagement or exclusion, being left out of important discussions and whatnot. Some element of that happens. It's a complex world, and sometimes it has nothing to do with you. It is happening for completely different reasons, and people personalize it. And there are multiple ways you can deal with this, right? I think first thing you should do is, if it's something deep and meaningful and in terms of disrespect to you, you have a little bit of a self-reflection, reflection on what's going on around you. Is it some misunderstanding? Somebody said something that you're misunderstanding their tone, or maybe they have a different native language and they're saying things in a very abrupt way, which looks like disrespect, but it's just a comment. But if you're sure about that it is direct disrespect, you want to be calm but be very direct and provide the feedback. You definitely want to do that, and you want to focus on your issue. What is bothering you? What is your problem? How do you perceive it? Not focus on the person. You don't want to talk about you do this and you do that and nobody likes it. And that's not the way to approach it. You want to just have a direct conversation with the person and not do it publicly, and just speak. That person says, "Look, Bobby, you said this yesterday in the meeting, and I don't. I can you help me understand? Why did you have to say this? I feel disrespectful." So you give the other person a chance to clarify, or maybe just they'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that," or whatever it is. It is really important for you to be direct and deal with it, because if you don't, it may continue, and they may not even realize that that's going on. So being silent about it is really not an option, in my opinion. I mean, once or twice it's okay. It's like, you don't want to be raising every single time you had this, but you have to have a little thick skin in business. But if you are seeing a recurring pattern, then you have to speak about it. Disrespecting somebody back, it doesn't help, because never is that person going to reflect on, oh, why did you behave like that? I think they're mostly going to think of you as a person who are disrespectful, and they will obsess about your behavior as opposed to reflecting on what caused you the harm in the first place. So I think those are the ways that, and you have to be mindful of which battles to pick. Again, when you're leading and in a large organization with very complex moving parts and lots of topics going on, there is some element of personal connection and bond and trust you have with somebody. It's similar to what you see in personal life, where if somebody's having a bad day and it's pretty visible to you that somebody hasn't eaten or had a personal thing going on in their life, some close person of the family has some big medical issue or something, you occasionally let it slide. Like, it's not personal. It's just they were having a situation and it's them. And oftentimes what happens is a week later, the person comes and tells you that, look, I'm sorry I behaved this way with you last week. Or it could be you. Everything I'm saying could be both ways, where you are the one who had infected harm on someone, and then you may be feeling this way. So I think, yeah, you have to deal with it if it's serious. There are some occasions where you may want to just let it go.
Thanks, Jigar. Again, you're modeling, mature leadership, right? In terms of what I heard with that is rather than being reactive when something flares up, to really step back and do that self-reflection. And often, also what I'm hearing is that these are anomalies, that the person's behavior hasn't quite modeled that disrespect usually. And so to get curious and respond rather than react, to just take a step back and explore what's going on. Again, what I see time and time again is people avoid doing that out of one, the speed of business and staying focused just on business. Two, not wanting to interfere or, getting into someone's business or personal lives. And the way you've described it, it's just very human. You don't need to be intrusive with it, but, just know enough to know whether it's time to back off and let the person have some time and, come back another day and take another take. So Jigar, as we wrap up, please share with us and our audience your top tips, usually 1 to 3 things that people can do day to day in having more respect in the workplace.
Yeah, I think just be really clear with your expectations when you are leading a very complex workspace with a lot of different projects. Create a culture of feedback, and be clear that feedback goes both ways. Be welcoming of the feedback as well. And some senior folks see feedback as disrespect, and you want to clarify, no, this is not meant as disrespect. These are expectations. Here are the things what we want to see from you in terms of either projects or behavior we want to demonstrate, and so on and so forth. And frequently celebrate success. It's an area where when you're moving really fast, people, especially engineering culture, where you're problem solving, you forget to take a step back and celebrate success, and that's very important. It kind of heals the scars of pushing for 3 months straight to launch something or so forth, right? And let it go both ways. Be very accountable when you're expecting accountability, and we have a fine way of being transparent and have transparency in the organization as well.
Fantastic. Jigar, I really appreciate your insights. I wish you well with your next venture. I can't wait to hear what you co-create and head into next. So thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you for having me on the podcast.